Been taking a shower yet today, so it's
It's
okay.
such a good time for you to walk away.
See, now Mark sounds good.
That's because Mark is good. What do you mean? I sound good.
There's no echo.
How about now? Is there less echo for me?
Yeah, it's a less echo for you.
Yeah,
and I just walked about a mile away, so it should be fine now.
Oh, yeah, we really far apart. From one end of the world to the other.
Anyway, so I guess you know what today's show is about. Did you catch the blurb at the beginning?
No, I didn't.
I was talking about a little bit about Auschwitz and the voices of 3 people who survived. Okay. But if any of you listening out there saw Schindler's List, okay, you'll remember that one of the boys actually hit in a pile of excrement, okay, in order to survive when they were looking to gas as many people as possible before the Allies came to liberate the camp. That was the big push, the final solution, as it was called. The final solution was to kill as many as they possibly could. And, when you study German history and you read German philosophy, while there has always been this animosity between Aryans and Jews, you just say to yourself, how could something like this happen, in the 20th century, in modern America? How could something like this happen? And Hitler was a great speaker. He knew how to move his crowd. He knew what they wanted to hear. They needed a scapegoat, and it was always easy to blame the Jews because throughout history, Jews have been blamed for just about everything. So it was easy for them to blame the Jews and herd them together, and people disappeared in the middle of the night, never to be seen again. So in fact, it's Time magazine put Hitler on its cover one year as Man of the Year. Now, you have to understand, Man of the Year is not necessarily a good thing. It just takes a person who has moved and changed the world more than anybody else, okay? And he certainly did that with Germany. He took a very weak Weimar democracy and turned it into a totalitarian state and nation with nationalism and pride, okay, and a great war machine, So now you're caught up to date.
I am caught up to date.
You're caught up to date. So you heard my part, right?
Yeah, I heard. Well, very echoey, but yeah.
As I said, my mom was in a town called Stanislawow, and they had 30,000 Jews in that town. Only 100 survived, and she was one of them. So the Germans really did that town in completely. Probably one of the worst catastrophes, where just about completely abolished the population of that town. And Mark has a short story about it, about Stanislawow.
Yeah, I'll get into it in a minute. I was just thinking of, I'm having a senior moment here.
I have those all the time.
Well, especially when I'm on the air. What can I tell you? It's unscripted, so I get a lot of things off the top of my head, and I sort of lose it. Every time I hear somebody else talk, my mind wanders because I want to concentrate on what they're saying. So if it comes back to me, I'll I'll share it with everybody. But this is a story by Robert Gaminder, who was one of the survivors. Okay. I know I don't have my reading glasses, so you'll have to bear with me. Just a sec. Okay. It was early in October 1941. I'm going to try to paraphrase so I don't read word for word. German authorities ordered the Jews of Stanislawow, Poland, to report to the town square. Robert Gaminder was 6 years old, and he was huddled with his mother, grandmother, and his older brother by 2 years, George. A group of approximately 20,000 Jews were marched into a nearby cemetery. Bob and his family were among the early arrivals, and they were shoved toward the cemetery's back wall, where they were crouched down. He said if you stood up, they shot you. Meanwhile, the people that were in the front were marched forward toward large pits in the ground. And I'm sure that, many of our listeners would remember seeing pictures of World War II after these people were ordered to dig. They literally dug their own graves. They dug a hole and then they were shot in the head. Okay, and if they were still alive, they were buried alive. As they fell into the earth, more Jews were ordered to step forward, and this whole process continued. When the Germans released the remaining Jews, obviously these were meant to set an example. There was complete pandemonium. Bob and his brother were separated from his mother and grandmother. They were knocked to the ground. They were unconscious. The grandmother noticed them, and when they finally were reunited with their mother, she was in terrible disarray, and she couldn't believe that they were all still alive, at least at that point. Then they say that Bob was born to Mano and Bertel Gaminder in 1935, and his older brother was born in 1933. Soon after Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, the Gestapo knocked on the door and they told his family that they were leaving in a half hour, put all their belongings together, and they were meeting downstairs. What happened was Bob and his family traveled from town to town, eventually settled in Stanislawow, which is now part of the Ukraine, in early 1940. They rented an apartment and supported themselves with the jewelry and cash that they had brought with them. Okay. When that ran out, they were really in a bad way. But on June 22nd, 1941, Germany attacked the Soviet Union. And by the fall of 41, the Germans were bombing Stanislaw, which was now under Soviet control. Bob's father suffered a heart attack and died. Bob's family returned to an empty apartment on October 12th. The place had already been cleaned out by local neighbors, whatever was left. In December of 41, the Jews were forced into the Warsaw Ghetto. Bob and his mother, his grandmother, all lived in, and his brother lived in one small room for all of them. And during this time, Bob witnessed babies being thrown against the wall or hanging from telephone wires, obviously Jewish babies. In the ghetto, Bob's widowed mother became friendly and romantically involved with some guy. He was single, and he helped them to escape the town. In March of 42, the Germans were planning to liquidate the ghetto. So escape was their only hope, but they were worried that Bob's mother would not leave her mother and the rest of the family in the ghetto. She consulted a rabbi who told them that it was important to save the children. So Bob's mother listened, and although She felt guilty until the day she died. She did what the rabbi said. Now, again, if you know anything about the history of some of the children of the Jewish families, those who were sympathetic took the children and they gave them forged papers, and they put them on a train, and they were dispersed throughout Europe, England, France. They were adopted in many cases by non-Jewish families, so some of them grew up almost not even knowing or remembering who they were. And just as an aside to the story, besides it also shows you how smart I am. A few days later, Bob's mother and her best friend Lola left the ghetto, walking out with hundreds of workers, each of them hiding a boy under her skirt. Okay, so that's how she smuggled the boys to the train station and out of town. They traveled, George and his brother, traveled to Warsaw, where they stayed with Brotfeld is the name of the man who befriended Bob's mother. They stayed with his sister and her non-Jewish husband. In midsummer 1942, however, once the family obtained false papers, they left Warsaw, moving around various farm areas. And Bob said the one thing he remembers is always being hungry. Seeking a better chance for survival, Bob's mother found a farmer near Krakow who agreed to hide the boys in exchange for one of the family's apartment buildings. But some months later, when George put on his hat in church, rather than removing it, there was an immediate buzz in the pews, and the farmer's wife panicked. Obviously, this was a no-no, okay, by putting his hat on, sort of like when he was in synagogue and putting on a yarmulke or covering his head, okay. So it was almost like a dead giveaway. The family kept moving. Now we're up to 1944 with the Russians approaching. They returned to Warsaw, to the apartment of Brotfeld's sister and brother-in-law. On August 1st, 1944, the Warsaw Uprising began, but on October 2nd, when the Germans defeated the Polish resistance and the Warsaw Ghetto fell, the family was rounded up along with thousands of civilians and Poles, and they were marched to a train station to await the cattle cars that would take them away. Short distance outside Auschwitz, the train stopped suddenly. Brotfeld lifted Bob over the side to unlatch the door and allowed four of them to escape. Bob, his brother, amongst them. The family hid one night in a farmhouse, and the next day they found an apartment where they remained until January 1945, when Russian troops liberated the area. They traveled to Bielsko, which was the home of Bob's mother, and let's see what other. They also traveled through Czechoslovakia to a displaced persons camp in Germany, where Bob was introduced to, forget about it, bananas, bubble gum, you name it, everything that's American. By then he learned that his mother had married this man that had helped them. Okay, in February 1947, they left for the United States and settled in Pittsburgh. Bob eventually graduated from Carnegie Mellon in 1957 with a degree in electrical engineering, joined the Army, served in the reserves for 7 years, got married, had 3 children, and that's it. So it's an amazing story, okay, sort of along the lines of Felix's mother, you know, always on the move, always traveling, because who knows if they would have survived, really, if they were in the concentration camp.
My mother was never in concentration camp. She was always in the ghetto.
That's not what I said. I said,
no, I'm just saying.
You know, who knows if any of them, you know, Bob, his brother,